As you begin to learn information, you forge new connections in your brain. That's what learning is. And by you interacting with information, you begin to upgrade the circuitry in your brain. You add new stitches into the three-dimensional tapestry. And science tends to be the language that demystifies the process. And we use science in our studies to be able to build a model of understanding. And when people can teach that information back, nerve cells that fire together, wire together, they begin to install the circuitry and create long-term memories or more permanent connections in the brain. So remembering then is sustaining those connections. And we know then, if you give people the right science, if they can understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, the how will get easier because they can assign meaning to what they're doing and put more intention behind it. So the next step is to take that philosophy, that theory, that information that's stored in the thinking neocortex, in the intellectual brain, the analytical mind, and now, because it's philosophy, the next thing to do is to personalize it, to demonstrate it, to apply it, to initiate it in some way. And in our events, we give people numerous opportunities to get their behaviors to match their intentions, to become conscious of their unconscious states of mind and body, get their actions equal to their thoughts. And it's a refining process because you're doing something inside of you. And yet, if you do it properly and you follow the instructions and you get your mind and body working together, you're going to have an experience. And that experience then should transform your biology in some way. In a sense, experience enriches circuitry in your brain. Now, you're laying down more connections by your interaction with an event. When those neurons string into place, the brain makes a chemical. And now the chemical is a feeling. And now when you start to feel more whole, when you start to feel more unlimited, when you start to feel more abundant, now your body's in the game. Now you're beginning to embody the truth of that knowledge. And now the information from that experience is selecting and instructing new genes, and you begin to change a person's genetic future. And we know from our week-long events that people can change their gene expression in 4 days. We've measured it. And the gene expression is usually for the greater good of the body. So what we want to do is not just do it once. We want to be able to replicate the experience and have the mind and body experience it over and over again to such a degree that the body now knows how to do it as well as the conscious mind. When we get that point where the mind and body are aligned in that way, now it's innate in you. It's second nature. It's easier. It becomes familiar. You don't have to think about it as much with your conscious mind. It becomes more automatic. And now you're beginning to master that philosophy. Now you're moving into a state of being. And so we decided to do these live stream events to give people a glimpse of what we're doing and use the knowledge and information. And that's exactly what we'll do. We'll take knowledge, and we'll initiate it from a philosopher to initiate to a master. From knowledge to experience to wisdom, from mind to body to soul, from thinking to doing to being, to learning it with your hands, applying it with your heart, learning with your head, applying it with your hands, knowing it by heart. And people around the world are beginning to make it easier. And we have research now that shows that people can literally self-regulate and sustain those states for an extended period of time. In fact, it's a skill. They know that they know how to do it. And our measurements show that it's easy for them. And they can do it now with their eyes open as well as their eyes closed. So what's the significance of that? When they return back to their lives, it's no longer just something that they do in their meditations. They want to do it with their eyes open and self-regulate and maintain a state of being. And it is about your life. So what we've done then is we've decided to talk about how we program people for a subconscious or mystical experience. And we have used this particular way of doing it for over a year now, and we have brain scans to show it's possible. And when I wrote the book, You Are the Placebo, I was studying extensively how we program ourselves subconsciously. And I just remember when I came across reading this one particular paper, I was so mad at myself. I was so frustrated with me because I realized how unconsciously I was programmed into limitation. And what I mean by that is so many people have been programmed into believing they need something outside of them to take away some feeling of emptiness or lack within them. And so whenever they feel that lack, whenever they feel that emptiness, if you can present something that's going to make it go away, and the person actually uses it, and they notice a change in their internal state, the moment they notice that change in their internal state, they're going to pay attention to what caused it. And now they become dependent on whatever that is, whether it's a pill, whether it's a video game, whether it's a shopping spree, whether it's a television show, something they're relying on in their outer world to change their inner state becomes a subconscious program. So we thought, well, why don't we start programming people for something more unlimited? And I was at a lunch in Zurich before I got here, and I was with a group of businessmen, and I was doing a talk for them. And one of the men said, so would you call this then positive brainwashing? And I said, no, it's more like reprogramming. And you can literally reprogram the subconscious to work in our favor instead of against us. Many years ago, when I started having mystical experiences, many times right before the mystical moment, I would see these with my eyes open or with my eyes closed, these very complex geometric patterns, these very complex standing waves of information. And when you see these, they're not known. They're just something outside of what you typically see. And they're alive, and they move, and they iterate within themselves, and they're changing patterns. But as you look, there's wholeness within wholeness within wholeness. There's so much wholeness that if you divide it, there's still wholeness. And when you look at them, you become fascinated by them, and you can't take your eyes off them. And in a sense, you start moving into trance. And I knew that when I had those moments, that in the next moment, my pineal gland was going to transduce that standing wave of information into profound imagery. I was going to have a transcendental moment. And most of the time, when your brain chemistry changes at night and melatonin levels go up because there's less light being picked up by your eye, the chemistry of melatonin causes your brain waves to slow down from beta to alpha to theta to delta. And most of the time, when people go to bed at night, they slide right down there very quickly. They escape very quickly, and they go through those different brainwave states, but they're not conscious of doing it. And when they wake up in the morning, and they're in a circadian rhythm, and their body's anticipating sunrise, all of a sudden, melatonin starts turning to serotonin, and all of a sudden, your brainwaves start picking up into beta, and you go from delta to theta to alpha to beta, and now you're conscious and awake. And in beta brainwave patterns, you tend to pay more attention to your outer world. That's healthy. So then, when you're aroused, though, by the hormones of stress, now you move into that high beta brainwave pattern, and now you're overly analytical. In fact, you're trying to figure things out. And when you're aroused by those stress hormones, and the emotions of those hormones are a record of the past, our research shows that when you're analyzing some problem, some condition, something about yourself within that emotion, you're making your brain worse because you're driving it further into higher beta brainwave patterns. Because as you think about the problem, you start producing more of the chemistry, and then you start analyzing, and all of a sudden you get caught in this loop. And people stay stuck for many, many, many years in that high beta brainwave pattern, and now they're reliant on something outside of them to change that state, whether it's a drug, a drink, whatever it is, a computer game, something to help them to change their internal state. So then when you gaze into the kaleidoscope and you open your awareness and you rest your attention on the space that your pineal gland occupies in space, and you tune into the energy of the mystical, as you sense the space and you hold your attention on that pineal gland, as you sense space and you look at it, you're not analyzing and thinking. And when you look at the kaleidoscope, our research shows that it bypasses the perceptual networks in your brain where you associate with known things. In other words, when you gaze into the kaleidoscope, you don't see anything familiar. You don't see any people that you recognize, any objects that you recognize. There's nothing of form that will associate and activate associated neurological networks. And when you do that, the brain begins to slow down and begin to move into trance. And when you move into trance now, you become suggestible to information. And when you slow your brain waves down with your eyes open into a level of theta, theta is a hypnotic state. That is when your body is literally resting and your mind is still conscious and awake. And it's that place between wakefulness and sleep, and that's the door. And the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open, and you're very programmable for information.